I'm in the center of your will, and you help me to do it. And so I'm excited about the sermon today. This is wonderful truth. And when I was in grade school, I think middle school maybe, there was this word that floated around, and especially because I was in Cincinnati at the time, and this word salty. And it was used like this. Like if you ever told a joke to someone and they got ticked off, man, you're salty. You're salty, man. It means you're frustrated. You're ticked off at somebody. And it was a slam, to say, man, you're salty. There's another word that has kind of floated around that went somewhat viral. It's a little more recent days, and this word lit. Man, that's lit. That's, and that concert's lit, or that program is lit, or that TV show is lit. It means that's super cool. That doesn't make it, if something's lit, it shouldn't be cool, but it's super cool. And today in this passage, we're going to find that Jesus tells us that we are to be salty Christians and we're to be lit Christians, but not in the way that those two words have been used in the past. So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 5 today, verses 13 to 16. Very well-known verses, probably just equally as well-known as the Beatitudes. And ones that honestly, you have to dig a little bit to really fully bring out all the meaning of these verses. Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. It says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house." This is a good verse to memorize. "Let your light shine, or so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven." May God bless the reading of His Word today. My friends, this passage is a call to action. We are not here simply just to be spiritual consumers. My friends, we are here to be spiritual contributors. We're here. The church doesn't exist simply just for us. No, we are the church and we exist for the world. We're not here to just be sponges that soak up a bunch of good stuff on Sunday and then kind of keep it to and kind of ooze out quietly by ourselves the rest of the week. No, yes, we are to be spiritual sponges and soak up as much good stuff as we can, but we're to go out into a world and squeeze the what we've accumulated out to the world that so desperately needs it. I think we get this idea too often that we just need to consume as much spiritual stuff and kind of keep it to ourselves. No, God says, you're not simply to just be a spiritual consumer. You're to be a spiritual contributor. We exist to make this world a better place. We exist to spread the love of Jesus to a world that so desperately needs it. We're not here just to get as much as we can. We're here to contribute as much as we can. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, I love this verse. Jesus tells us that we are a chosen race. Listen to this next phrase, a royal priesthood. Kevin, did you know you're a priest? Kevin's a priest. I'm a priest. We're all priests and priestesses today. He goes on to say, you're a holy nation, a people for God's, listen to how this language, God's own possession. Why? Why are we that? Why are we called to be priests? So that we may proclaim the excellencies of Him who called you out of darkness into this marvelous light. I didn't see one place in there where it says just go to church on Sunday and you're good to go. No, He says you are a priest or a priestess who's to go out into the world and spread to Jesus, to spread to the world what Jesus has done. He's called you out of that darkness into the light. That is why we're here. We are priests and priestesses. What do priests do? They're the kind of the go-between God and man, right? God says that's what you got to go do. That's what you've got to go do. The world can't get to me because they need someone to do it. And you're that person. You are called to go out into the world and be a priest. I was reading in my Bible this week, Acts. It just began the book of Acts, and I love the book of Acts. Acts chapter 1, verse 8, we all know it well. But you'll receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. And you shall be witnesses both where? In Jerusalem and in Judea and Samaria, even to the uttermost parts of the earth. And in my Bible, it had a little asterisk. And so I went down to the bottom of the page and it said, and even all of Newton County. That's what it said, I promise. Don't check it, but it's there, I promise you. It's there. My friends, that's why we're here. We're not here to fill pews on a Sunday morning. No, we're here to fill pews and then to go out to Newton County and change what we can of Newton County around us. That's why we're here. We're not supposed to just be spiritual, consumers. We're here to contribute to the world around us. John Stott at a missionary conference, he said this. He said, the greatest hindrance to the advance of the gospel worldwide is the failure of the lives of God's people. The greatest hindrance. Not the devil, not sin. The greatest hindrance to the advance of the gospel is us, because we're not doing our part. That's harsh words at a missionary conference, isn't it? Convicting words on a Sunday morning service. Church, we can't hinder the gospel by failing to impact the world around us. This passage explicitly states that we are to be salt and light. We're salty and lit. We're supposed to be that type of a Christian. You know, both salt and light are images of impact on something else, right? Salt impacts meat, right? It does something to meat. And light always does something to darkness, right? It dispels the darkness. And so these are active statements. And so I think we can render these statements, and we're going to today, that you salt the earth and you enlighten the world. He didn't say, yes, you are to go and to salt the earth and you are to enlighten the world. My friends, it's time for us to reimagine our role as God's redemptive agents here on earth. That's why we're here. We're not here to just spiritually consume some stuff and, stumble across the finish line into heaven. No, we are a part of His kingdom. And He says, I want you to help build my kingdom. Go out and build it. And that's why we are here. So what do you say? What do you say? Let's be those type of Christians. So number one, you salt the earth. You salt the earth. And before we go any further, I want you to realize that Jesus doesn't say in this passage, go and figure out how to be salt. Go out and try really hard to be salt. Or go figure out how to light your life. No, He says simply, you are salt. You are light. But what we'll find in this passage is that we can do things to hinder our ability to be salty. And we can do things that hide our light. We don't have to figure out how to be salty and how to be light. We just have to make sure that we don't allow things in it that ruin our testimony or that ruin the purity, if you might want to call that, of the salt. So you salt the earth. What does this mean? Salt of the earth. Oh, that guy's just salt of the earth, right? We've all heard that statement. Well, what does it mean here in the Scripture? Well, salt had at least 5 functions in the ancient world: purity, preservation, flavor, healing, and creation of thirst. And I don't think many of those uses has changed much since then. But followers of Jesus can and should be all of these: purity and preservation and flavor and healing and a creation of thirst. But I think Jesus, the main functions of salt in ancient days was this idea of purity and preservation, this idea of preserving something. Kevin, if you went hunting back in Jesus' day, you didn't have a deep freeze that you could take your score and put it in the freezer. No, you had to either eat it right away with a bunch of people, or you had to pack that meat with salt. That was the only way to preserve it, to make sure the bacteria was gone, and to keep fungi and things from growing. You had to make sure that you had to pack that full of salt. And Jesus said, in the same way as salt acts as a preservative and as a purifier to meat, He said, you are to be that. He says, so when Jesus says that you're salt of the earth, He means that we are to be the most powerful of all restraints within the sinful society that we live in. We are to help be restraints and purifiers of the sin around us. I like how Tasker puts it. He puts it this way. He said the disciples are to be a moral disinfectant in a world where moral standards are low, constantly changing, and non-existent. Isn't that true? Our moral standards these days are low, constantly changing, and a lot of times they're not even existing. And he says we're to be that moral disinfectant. You know, one of the hottest commodities today is what? Hand sanitizer, right? I've used so much hand sanitizer in the last month. I've got it in every place I drive. I've got it wherever. When I use hand sanitizer all the time. And you know, for the longest time, you couldn't even find it. And people were buying. I remember one time I saw this story. As soon as all of this came out, and nobody knew what was going on. This one guy went around to all the Dollar Trees, Dollar Generals, and it just bought up as much hand sanitizer as he could and sold them for $5 and made thousands of dollars. Hand sanitizer is a hot commodity right now. And Jesus says, you are to be the hand sanitizer of the world around you. You are to disinfect. You are to purify. You are to help stop the moral decay that is going on around us. And although I believe Jesus' main focus was this idea of preserving and hoping to slow the decay around us, I think it's good for us to avoid narrowing and talk about all the potentials that salt could have had in that day and think about it, how we can live those out today. So, purity and preservation, some questions I think we can ask is, are my attitudes, actions, and words adding to the moral decay around me? Or are my actions slowing the decay around me? When you walk into a room, do people know they need to change the subject, or do they keep on talking? Do you add to the subject? Are you adding or subtracting to the moral decay around you? Flavor and taste. Do you leave a bad taste in people's mouth after they interact with you? When you leave and you've had a conversation with them, do they leave saying, man, why was that person so pleasant? Or do they say, why was he so obnoxious and just annoying? What kind of a taste? We need to have the flavor of Christ on our lives at all times. And we need to make sure that we have a good flavoring, a good seasoning about us. We don't want people to be turned off. If your interaction with them leaves a bad taste in your mouth, why do you think they would ever want to come to church? Or why do you think they would ever want to know more about your God? We need to leave a good taste in people's mouth. Healing. Do your words, your love, your affirmation, does it bring healing to people's lives? Or do they bring hurt to people's lives? Yes, salt in a wound does sting, doesn't it? But it ultimately brings about healing. I know lots of you have probably been able to swim in salt water. And inevitably, when you're on the beach, you get a cut or a scrape or something, and you go get in the water, and it stings a little bit. But the longer you swim, you forget about it. When you get out, it's almost completely healed. And salt water is an incredible thing. There's things in salt that heal our bodies. In ancient times, when babies were born, they used to rub them down with salt to try to make sure that they would be pure and clean and safe. And they thought it brought healing to them. Does your life bring healing to people around you? Or does it bring hurt? We need to be salt and light. Yes, our words might hurt a little bit, because as you have an interaction with someone, you might say, this and this and this in your life is what caused that. But as you share those words, if they listen to you, that can bring healing to their lives. Creation of thirst. Do your interactions with people make them thirsty for Jesus, or thirsty for something to forget their interaction with you? Let me say that again. Do your interactions with people make people thirsty for Jesus, or thirsty for something to forget their interaction with you? We need to be salt, my friends, and we need to make people thirsty for Jesus. Jesus ends this verse with a warning about not losing our saltiness. Now, I know salt is stable, but things can get into salt and mix with salt that causes impurities and causes it to lose its taste. Essentially, Jesus is saying the Christian must retain his or her Christ-likeness. You must stay salty. Christians become indistinguishable from non-Christians and contaminated by the impurities of the world. They lose their influence. If you allow the impurities of the world to get into your life, you lose the effectiveness of your saltiness. because they see no difference in you than they do themselves. So why would they want what you have if they don't see anything different in your life? This is an important statement. I think we need to get a grasp of this, and I say things like this all the time. The influence of Christians in and on society depends on their being distinct, not identical. The influence of Christians in and on society depends on their being distinct, not identical. You know, a lot of the craze right now is we just got to relate. And so we'll do just about anything. I know one pastor of one of the largest churches in America. He says we'll do anything short of sin to reach people for Jesus. Now, that's a good saying, but if you think about that too long, you can get in some pretty dark water pretty quick, can't you? My friends, we got to make sure that we don't become so much a part of the world that when people come to our church or people and start serving our Jesus, that they don't change. That's a problem. We need to stay distinct. That's where our influence is. You know, if the only visible difference between Christians and non-Christians is we go to church more than they do and we give more money than they do, I wouldn't sign up for that. I'll tell you that right now. I got a lot of better things I can do on a Sunday, and a lot of better things I can do with my money if that's all that Christianity is about. No, I give my money. I go to church. I do these things because Jesus has radically changed my life. I can't even begin to imagine if Jesus hadn't have got a hold of my life before I graduated from college, where I would be today. It wouldn't be here, I promise you that. And my life would look totally different. And your lives would look totally different. And you wouldn't do the things you do if Jesus hadn't changed you. And we can't lose that distinctiveness in the world because they're not going to want what we have. Our influence is in being distinct, not identical. Dr. Lloyd Jones emphasizes this. He said, and I'm spending some time on salt because I think salt is where we lose it. Sometimes we're good at being light, but sometimes we lose the saltiness. He said this. He says, the glory of the gospel is that when the church is absolutely different from the world, she invariably attracts it. It is then that the world is made to listen to her message, though it may hate it at first. You know, there's a lot of people who hate what we're preaching. There's a lot of people who hate what we teach. But there are a few, if they listen long enough, and if they respond to the grace of God in their lives, they might begin to see that what we're saying is not that crazy after all. You know, sometimes Christianity can bite a little bit, and salt can it? You know, I'll never forget, has anyone ever had a maple bacon donut? Maple bacon. It changed your life, didn't it, Keith? Oh my goodness. I've been forever changed. Maple bacon donut. I love bacon. Bacon is a staple in my house. I love bacon so much, and I love donuts with maple. And I said, you can't beat this, right? This is going to be the best thing ever. I got my maple bacon donut, and I took a first bite, and it weirded me out. Because I was expecting this sweet donut, and I got a salty bite. But you know, the longer I went, the better it got. And my friends, anytime I'm near that donut shop, I make sure I swing in and get a maple bacon donut. It'll change your life, I promise. It'll change your life. My friends, we need to be maple bacon donuts to the world. It might taste a little funky at first, but hang with it and show them that, yes, it does sting a little bit, but what we have to offer is worth it. It'll bring healing. It'll bring restoration to your life. It'll change your life if you'll believe what we have. You know, salt has some negative connotations, right? But that leads us to our next point. Christians are supposed to be light. And light's a positive thing, isn't it? It brings light into darkness. It dispels the darkness. And that's why, I say all the time, it brings balance and tension to our relationship. Sometimes we're not good at being salt, but sometimes we're too good at being salt, right? We're good at stinging, biting, and we're not good at showing the light of Jesus. We need to be not just stinging them with the truth, but we need to be, shining them, spotlighting them with the love of Jesus as well. Let me just read these verses again real quick. It says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify you. No. and glorify your Father which is in heaven. That is what it's all about. Charles Spurgeon said that Christ has lighted us so that we might enlighten the world. He has shined His light on us so that we can shine our light on the world. You know, Jesus said, He said, I'm the light of the world. He said that in the book of John. He says, I am the light of the world. And you know the most amazing thing is Jesus looked at His disciples. He said, yeah, I'm the light of the world, but you are also the light of the world. That causes me to pause. Because Jesus is saying, I want you to be what I am. I'm not here anymore. You've got to take my place. That is a huge responsibility, isn't it? Jesus says, you've got to be me. You've got to be my hands and my feet in the world. You are, yes, I'm the light of the world, but you got to go show them what it looks like. You've got to be my hands and feet. What a responsibility for us today. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 8 to 11 kind of explains what it looks like to practically live out being the light. It says, for you were formerly darkness. You remember those days when you were in the darkness and it just seemed to envelop you. But you know it's going to be good whenever you see a comma and the conjunction but. Now you are in the light of the Lord. You were taken from darkness into light. So what now? Walk as children of light. Don't keep walking like children of dark. He says, for the fruit of light consists in all goodness and righteousness and truth. Our world could use a good dose of that, couldn't they? Goodness and righteousness and truth. Try to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. That's what we all are doing, right? We're just on a journey trying to continue to find, Jesus, what is pleasing to you in my life? Yeah, Jerry Lynn might be able to do that or can't do that, but God, it's not about Jerry Lynn, it's about me. God, what is pleasing to me? Pastor Phil can do that, can't do that, but Jesus, what's pleasing to you? He goes on to say, don't participate in unfruitful deeds of darkness. Listen to this. Here's our call to action. But instead, even expose them. Expose them. He says, go and shine your spotlight on them. And just shine your spotlight on the dirt. No, that's not good. Shine your spotlight on them. When our light of Jesus should be in such a way that it makes people feel uncomfortable. When there's dark stuff going on when we walk in the room. Our light needs to shine and permeate the darkness of this world. There's a story of a child then, Robert Louis Stevenson. He wrote, what is that book? Treasure Island. Treasure Island. That is an incredible book. But as a kid, he was in poor health. And one night he was quite sick, and his nurse walked into his room, and little Robert had his nose just pressed right up against the glass of frosty glass, and he was looking out the window. His nurse said, "Get away from that window! You're gonna catch your death of a cold. Get away!" But Rogers just kept pressed right in there and was gazing out onto the street, and his attention, the lamp lighter had caught his attention. Back in the day, the lamp lighter had to go down the street and light the lamps so that they would shine at night. And Robert called his nurse over and he said, "Look, there's someone out there poking holes in the darkness." My friends, that's why we're here. We're here to start poking some holes in the darkness. That's what Jesus has called us to do. Jesus uses two examples to illustrate how he wants our light to shine. First, he says, a city set on a hill. You can see that light for miles around, can't you? When you truly have the light of Jesus in your life, it's obvious to those around you. The second was a lamp. And Jesus said, why in the world would you light a lamp only to put a bowl on top of it? He said, no, set that sucker up on a shelf so the whole house can see. He says, so Jesus is saying, don't hide your light. Don't hide your light. When people come around that you know aren't Christians, don't act like you're not a Christian. He says, act like a Christian, man. If you're a Christian, act like it. Don't hide your light. Let your light shine. Jesus said in the same way as those two examples, we're to let our light shine. Why? So people can see our good works and ultimately so God can be glorified. That's what it's all about. That is why we're here. We are here on this earth for one purpose, and that is to bring as much glory to God as we possibly can. And we do that by being salt and light to a world that so desperately needs it. So desperately needs it. You know, I love 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 to 12. Peter implores us. He says, "Dear friends, I urge you as foreigners and exiles." You say, that's weird. I'm a citizen of America. No, you're a foreigner and exile. This isn't where you land. This isn't home. He says, "to abstain from all sinful desires, which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us." You know, people are accusing Christians of not doing the right thing nowadays, aren't they? And they're trying to make laws to make sure that we can't do what we're saying we need to do. But let's let our light so shine among men that they might not like what we're doing, but it ultimately still brings glory to God. Let's not give in to the sinful desires around. Let's not tarnish our light. Let's let our light shine as we live pure and holy lives. You know, our lives should be so marked by Jesus that someone should come up to us and like that little nursery rhyme, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are," right? That I want to shine so brightly. And now if someone comes up to you this week and says that, please call me. I want to meet them because I don't know who would say that, but that's how we need to live our life. They need to be wondering, why are you the way you are? And if they never wonder, we need to say, God, am I living a distinct enough life? Are there things in my life that I need to take out, or are there things in my life that I need to add so that people can know that I am who I say I am? You know, it's impossible if you walk out in the middle of the day and the sun's up bright, it's impossible to just gaze straight on it, right? You can't gaze at it. It's too bright. Your eyes begin to water. It hurts. But you know, we can walk out at night, full moon, and gaze at the beautiful moon for hours and hours and hours. You know, often we forget that the moon only reflects the greater light of the sun. Somewhat similar, many people find that it's hard to gaze directly at God, don't they? This idea of God and this idea of going to church and praying and reading my Bible and this whole giving my life to Jesus kind of weirds them out. But they can gaze on our lives. And if they gaze long enough, and if they respond to the grace that God gives them, we can lead them to Jesus. They might not be able to gaze directly at the sun because God is pretty intense, isn't He? And He requires some pretty intense things. But as they see what has happened in our life as a result of giving our lives to God, they might start wondering what's going on in our lives. Let's let our light, the only reason we're shining is because we got a greater light behind us. Let's let our light so shine before men that they see our good works. Not like, oh, maybe. No, let them see them. Let's let our light shine. John Stott said this. I read it this week, and I think I even posted it because he wrote this in 1987. And I'm sorry, I keep quoting John Stott. He has one of the best commentaries on the Sermon on the Mount. So you're going to hear John Stott a lot for the next 3 months or whatever. But he wrote this in 1987, and it sounds like he wrote it last week as a Facebook post. Listen to this. He says, "What message do we have, then, for such people who feel themselves strangled by the system, crushed by the machine of modern technocracy, overwhelmed by political, social, and economic forces which control them and over which they have no control? They feel themselves victims of a situation they are powerless to change. What can they do? It is in this soil of this frustration that revolutionaries are bred, dedicated to the violent overthrow of the system." Sounds like today, doesn't it? But it's also from this same soil that revolutionaries of Jesus can arise. Equally dedicated activists, even more so, but committed rather to the spread of His revolutionary love and joy and peace. And this peaceful revolution is more radical than any program of violence, both because its standards are incorruptible and because it changes people as well as structures. And then he asks this question: have we lost our confidence in the power of the gospel of Christ? Let's be people, as revolutionaries or revolutions are being formed around us, let's stand up and form a revolution for Jesus Christ. Let's be salt and light in a world that so desperately needs it. Let's not just be spiritual consumers. Let's be spiritual contributors. I end with this story. There's an ancient legend that was first told by early Christians which pictures the day when Jesus got back to heaven after he'd finished all of his work on earth. The angel Gabriel meets Jesus in heaven and welcomes him home. He says, "Lord, who have you left behind to carry on your work?" Jesus tells him about his disciples and how they're just a little band of fishermen and farmers and housewives. And Gabriel said, "But God, Lord, what if they fail you? What if they lose heart or drop out? What if things get too rough for them or they let you down?" Well, Jesus says, "Then all I've done on earth is for nothing. Will come to nothing." Gabriel says, "You don't have a backup plan? You didn't put somebody in place just in case something happened?" Jesus says, "No, there's no backup plan. The church is it. There's nothing else." Gabriel was puzzled, and he asked one more time, "Nothing else? But what if they fail?" The early Christians knew the answer that Jesus gave. They won't fail. They won't fail. You know, Jesus says, in this world, you're going to have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. I've overcome the world. My friends, He's called us to be salt and light. He didn't call us to build a bunker and hang out till the end of this craziness. No, He says, get out there. Be salt and light in a world that is searching and longing for something they don't even know what they're looking for. Let's not just be, yes, let's consume all we can spiritually. But the church isn't just for us. The church is for the world. And let's go out and contribute. What do you say? What do you say? Let's stand. Let's stand.